Okay, we're all set.
All right. You live, James?
Yes, all set.
All right. So welcome to the June 8th, 2020 virtual meeting for the City of Columbia Plan Commission. I'd like to call this meeting to order. This meeting is being conducted online only, but is being streamed on several platforms. Instructions for submitting written comments and commenting during the virtual meeting were included in the meeting agenda in the city's website. Virtual meeting for the City of Columbia. Comments and direct participation requests were required to be submitted by 1:30 this afternoon. Any comments submitted after the deadline will be added to the record of tonight's meeting, but will not be read during the meeting.
Okay, hold on, I'm kind of.
Hey guys, we're getting a lot of feedback on our end. There's like some echoing or something.
If everyone can mute that's not talking. I think Hal, can you mute yours?
So if you would, Amy, could you call roll?
Yes. Doug Garmer.
Here.
Hal Hoppy.
Here.
Pete Ingold. Beth Cutter Sanchez.
Here.
Amy Missler here. Tony Murphy.
Here.
If you can speak up just a little bit.
Here.
Lauren Noby.
Here.
Will Trowbridge.
Here.
Andrea Yoakum.
Here.
Okay, I declare a quorum. We have 8 of the 9 members here, it seems. Next item, approval of minutes. So I call item 3A, which is the approval of minutes for the May 11, 2020 regular meeting. Did anybody get a chance to look at that? Have any comments about it? Any changes, observations? I noticed just one small clerical error under Will's name. It's Will, Trowbridge. That's the only thing I saw. No comments, then we'll move to approve those minutes. Can I get a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Thank you.
This is Lauren. I will second that motion.
Lauren. And roll.
Okay, sorry, I messed up my form. I'll have to make some notes here. Doug Garmer. Hal Hoppy.
Yes.
Beth Cutter Sanchez.
Yes.
Amy Missler, yes. Tony Murphy.
Yes.
Lauren Noby.
Yes.
Will Trowbridge.
Yes.
Andrea Yoakum.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Next item, 3B, approval of the minutes from our special meeting on May 26, 2020, the virtual meeting. Did everybody get a chance to look at that? Have any comments, complaints, changes, mistakes? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve those.
I'll make the motion to approve the minutes.
Thanks, Will.
I'll second. Hal Hoppy.
Al. Amy?
Doug Garmer. Hal Hoppy.
Yes.
Beth Cutter Sanchez.
Yes.
Amy Missler, yes. Tony Murphy.
Yes.
Lauren Noby,
Yes.
Will Trowbridge,
Yes.
Andrea Yoakum.
Yes.
Okay, thanks, everybody. Next item, public input, not on tonight's agenda. Scott, was there any written comments or questions?
There were no general comments requests submitted, and there are no participants under the general public input section.
Okay, great. Thank you, Scott. Next item, public hearings. So I call item 5A, which is the public hearing for the proposed text amendment to sections 17.04.030, 17.26.030, and 17.56.020 of the Columbia Zoning Code. Does anybody have any ex parte communications they'd like to report concerning any of these items? Going once, going twice. Doesn't sound like it's Scott. Staff report?
Okay, this is a couple of text amendments that were the staff was asked to initiate by City Council, directed in some form or fashion. I'll cover these one at a time. These were originally prepared for March, and obviously since that time we had a couple of months of no meetings, and then had some delays due to the COVID crisis. So this was kind of rescheduled, and we are moving forward with this text amendment since it doesn't have the same procedural requirements as a special use as under state statute. But we are going to, will be considered a public hearing. And there are several people signed up, and there are some written comments I'll need to get to after the staff report as well. So in terms of staff report, there were two things in particular that are being addressed here. Number one is based on the direction of City Council and to implement their desired approach to regulating cannabis dispensaries in the city of Columbia. The first set of amendments to the code would deal with that. I'll point out to the first ones, which are to the definition section, which basically defines cannabis dispensary in the way that it's defined in state statute now. And also what we've done is call the remainder of the uses that are approved by license in the state, we've called them disallowed cannabis use. So the only thing that council wants to allow out of all of the different types of cannabis uses are the dispensaries. So it would be the sales only. None of the growing or transporting types of facilities would be allowed. So with that, there's a very specific means by which council has agreed to and decided to regulate the cannabis use. And I'll pull up a I'm going to pull up a map for you real quick to explain this. So if everybody can see my screen here. So basically what we'll be looking at is, first off, it's only allowed within the CP Commercial Park zoning district. So that is the only zoning district that related to the cannabis uses that are being amended at this time. And basically, aside from putting it as an allowable use in the CP district, which is shown in the proposed amendment, which would be number 11 in the allowable uses, or the permitted uses rather, would skip forward a few pages or skip back a few pages, and if also adjusting the criteria, which the criteria are what is illustrated in this map. First off, there's an interstate highway proximity boundary, which is saying that a cannabis dispensary, in addition to being allowed only in the CP Commercial Park Zoning District, must be within 1 mile of an interstate highway. And the other one is an incompatible use buffer, which would essentially not allowed within 2,500 feet of a school. And what that puts us at is the green area you see on the map. And I'm trying to point out with the little hand there. So that is the extent of as it would be, as cannabis dispensaries would be regulated in the zoning code. They are regulated very strictly under the state requirements to get licensed. So to be frank with you, there's really no need to regulate them any further. Before I move on to the C1 zoning district, did anybody have any of the commission have any questions on these zoning amendments? None? Okay.
Quick question, Scott.
Yeah.
Just about the Columbia Soccer Club down there.
Uh-huh.
Is that a concern with, does anybody know how close that's potentially going to be to?
It's on state right of way, so it's not even its own property, so I don't know how we can classify that as anything other than state highway property.
Is that C3 right there?
It is, yeah.
And then the other question was 2,500 feet, that's about what, half a mile
Roughly.
So that's a half a mile to ICS, or
Well, that's the closest, which is over at
over half a mile?
2,500 feet, yeah.
Okay. And then 1 mile from the highway, so you have that marked off on that.
Correct.
Is there a reason?
Yes. So that they don't have to get in and drive through town. It's easy in, easy out.
Is it just an arbitrary number or?
No, this was not arbitrary whatsoever. This was done very deliberately, so that was the way it was worked out. There was a lot of discussions with Chief Paul, Doug Grimm, myself, the mayor, to try to figure out what would be the most sensible solution for Columbia, and this is what we. This is about as restrictive as we could be and still allow it.
And so kind of what Tony's kind of going, I guess. I assume that it's about 1 mile from the edge of that CP to the highway.
Exactly. That gave us our first interchange off the interstate to be able to work with, and still space it to where we're half a mile away from any school. And then it's still, like I said, we've got a great separated interchange. It'll make it easy to get in and out. And it's a fairly undeveloped area now. So it'd have to be either a ground up construction or one of the 2 other buildings would have to be refurbished.
That's our only CP zone anyway, right?
That's our only CP. Yeah, that's our only area that's zone CP in the city right now. If there were any further CP, if the CP district was expanded further to a different part of town, it still would not be able to have a dispensary in it unless it's within that 1 mile of the interstate,
It's
or
pretty restricted.
and over 2,500 from a school.
So same things cover any new potential CP districts.
That's correct. Well, there's only one CP
Right.
district. It would be an expansion of the
Right.
current.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions about those 2?
And then the remaining The remaining zoning text amendments are related to the C1 Neighborhood Business Zoning District. And the intent here was to clarify some of the former language that council felt needed to be clarified in light of a recent case that I'm sure we're all familiar with. And while we were at it, we had to clean up one other item. So what this would do then, under conditions of use, so the way that our code previously read was interpreted in a way that the city did not agree with. So we defined it in a way that we felt it should be defined. And that is now that restaurants, tea rooms, and cafes shall be allowed outdoor seating, service, and/or designated smoking areas provided they shall not be located within 50 feet of a property parcel used for residential purposes or zoned for residential uses. Prior to that, we were allowing seating areas, but not the actual sale in outdoor areas, as that is the literal interpretation of our own code. We also took this opportunity to clean up C, which that resolves some conflicts with the permitted and special use that were allowed. Right now, actually drive-ins are not technically allowed. Drive-throughs or drive-ins, that is, or delivery types of businesses. Obviously, since we have several such businesses in the C1 district, we needed to clean that up. So it has been changed to say that establishments of the drive-in or drive-through type are not permitted unless expressly allowed herein as listed permitted use or special use. So in other words, since there's a restaurant, if they've got a drive-through, they would be allowed a drive-through if the restaurant is listed, which it is, as allowed use. And then finally, to alleviate some of the noise concerns, since this is still a neighborhood commercial district, clarified that the amplification of music, voice, or other sounds is prohibited in outdoor locations. Likewise, sounds shall not be amplified from within a structure in such manner to be deliberately heard in an outdoor location, for example, through an open door window, or to be heard beyond the property boundaries. So we feel that that gives the sufficient clarification to the code that will meet the needs of the council, and that is the way council intends on our zoning to be interpreted. So with that, I'll ask if the council has, or if the commission has any questions of me before we move on.
Anybody have any questions for Scott?
I do quickly. This is Andrea. Scott, on that letter G about regarding the music, voice, and other sounds in outdoor locations. So this doesn't, in this particular zone, there's no like by 10 p.m. or a time limit. It's just none at all.
Well, it's a little ambiguous because the, as you'll notice on F, business hours are to be established by the city council, but the city council has never established any business hours. But where business hours are established, they need to be maintained. There is a related case, I guess you could say. Sunset Overlook, the special use that we'll be hearing that we're going to ask you to table once again to the July 13th meeting. There will be a time limit set in their special use, for example. So that way we actually get we get the set in there. But when that location was originally proposed, and to my knowledge, for none of the other C1 zoning areas, we don't have anything on any of the ordinances as there being a business hours established. So that is something that for some reason has not gotten done in the past. So we will be rectifying that with the at least the Sunset Overlook issue with their special use permit.
Thank you.
And then on that G, Scott, so pure acoustic would be okay. Just no amplification, right?
No, because ancillary entertainment is not allowed in outdoor locations. So there would have to be, upon receiving a special use, somebody could do ancillary entertainment indoors. But
We just focus on the word amplification.
yeah,
Then another question about B. I noticed we didn't say anything about, and maybe we didn't on purpose, about the capacity of an outdoor seating. Do we want to go there, or is this?
no.
Okay.
Unless somebody wants to figure out a way we can enforce it all the time.
It's not realistic.
It's not realistic.
Anybody else have any questions for Scott? If not, I will ask Scott to read written comments or questions that he received.
Okay, couple things. First off, I will note too that just by way, since these zoning amendments were mentioned in these communications we received, I'm going to mention it. This was specific to Sunset Overlook, but all of them asked for supported zoning changes that would allow them to conduct their business. And in that note, we have received 302 letters or emails in support of the zoning amendment. We've received a written petition with 332 signatures. And I've actually looked at the online petition that has been submitted. It has 2,151 signatures on it as of today. So that's all in support of the zoning measures that were directed specifically for Sunset Overlook's issues. I've not received any letters or emails in opposition. However, we do have several public comments that I will read into the record. The first one from Bruce Freeland reads, "You are being asked to consider changes to Columbia's C1 zoning ordinances directly affecting Sunset Overlook's operations. Although the changes have been presented as if they are a compromise between Sunset and neighboring property owners, if enacted, the changes would essentially permit Sunset Overlook to operate as it did when it opened, which has caused much conflict and embroiled all involved in extensive litigation. None of Sunset Overlook's prior seating or service areas were within a 50-foot setback of our properties. So the proposed setback in 17.26.030D will do nothing to protect us. Patrons will, without question, gather on the back patio in large groups, engaging in heavy drinking and shouting juvenile obscenities toward our homes. Section G will not protect us as we can hear every word of even normal conversations. The area is essentially an amphitheater, and we have the best seats in the house if the goal is to hear drunken screaming into the early morning hours. Section G's use of the word deliberately also creates ambiguity that Sunset Overlook will use a claim that will use to claim the lack of intentional violations. Please protect our property rights as residents of Columbia." And I'm going to remind you all at this point, this is not strictly a Sunset Overlook issue. This is the C1 zoning district. This applies equally to all businesses in the C1 zoning district. So don't consider this as only affecting Sunset Overlooks. Anyway, the next public comment also is from Paul Gillespie. It reads, I have lived in my home for 29 years now. Up until 2 years ago, it was peaceful, quiet, and had a beautiful view. Everything changed when Sunset Overlook opened. Sunset Overlook's owners had the property rezoned to C1 and told us on record when doing so that they were going to be a bakery. Now we have a bar in our backyards. We have video recordings and multitudes of photos of what this has been like for us. People cursing, people flipping us the bird, people shouting 1, 2, 3, and then screaming in unison, followed by what are they going to do, sue us too? And then laughing together while it's pitch black outside in the summer. This is not a laughing matter. All we want is to have our peace back. We are simply asking that the city enforce rules put in place to protect us and not enact new loophole-filled ordinances. We are happy to discuss potential solutions representing actual compromises, solutions that will end our problems, and not simply perpetuate the current Hatfield and McCoy situation. The third one is from Cindy Huseman, and it reads, I am humbly asking the city to consider why the current protections offered by the C1 regulations were put in place to protect surrounding property owners. Back in 2005, the city specifically considered these provisions, and in their transcripts noted that outdoor beer gardens would not be acceptable in C1 districts. Sunset Overlook has submitted self-drafted letters signed by people from all over, St. Louis, Godfrey, Waterlook, etc. But no one who signed those letters has had to deal with Sunset Overlook's antics in their backyard. Their properties don't have a bar right down the hill. We are asking for a compromise for Sunset Overlook to conduct business. What is that? Anything I need to be worried about? We are asking for a compromise that will allow Sunset Overlook to conduct business and still protect us. This commission must take note that even without outdoor service and without any ancillary entertainment, Sunset Overlook can and has thrived. In February 2020, before the coronavirus hit us, Sunset Overlook regularly had a full parking lot, despite the Illinois courts restricting its activities to indoors only. We can coexist with Sunset Overlook, but our coexistence must reflect protection of our pre-existing property rights. We ask that you stand up and protect our constitutional rights now, so we may all avoid continued contentious litigation over these matters. The next one is from Natalie Lorenz. And it reads, the proposed changes to the C1 zoning district, if enacted, will constitute illegal spot zoning, which is allowing uses in a location out of character for the surrounding area. In determining whether illegal spot zoning has occurred, Illinois courts consider whether this subject property is zoning conformity with surrounding existing uses. Here, the proposed changes expand the current C1 district or the C1 ordinance so that it permits activities previously reserved only for businesses in C2 districts. Sunset Overlook previously requested C2 rezoning and was denied upon the very same considerations that a court would analyze in determining that zoning Sunset Overlook as C2 would be illegal spot zoning. There is no legitimate need for making the proposed changes to the C1 ordinance except as an end run around this spot zoning issue. And the changes, if enacted, will invite litigation with constitutional challenges. My clients want to see an end to this dispute and are more than willing to discuss ways to accommodate the needs of all parties involved. Number one, disallow seating service and smoking in any yard adjoining a parcel used for residential purposes. And number two, disallow amplification of any sound such that the sound may be heard from neighboring properties. And the final written comment we received is from William Nyhoff. My comments propose the following language to bring an end to this matter. For 17.26.30b, this language is proposed. Restaurants, tea rooms, and cafes shall be allowed outdoor seating service and/or designated smoking areas, provided they shall not be located in a front yard or side yard adjacent to a parcel used for residential purposes or zoned for residential uses. Districts R1 through R7 zoning districts. And for 17.26.030g, the proposed language is the amplification of music, voice, or other sounds is prohibited in outdoor locations. Likewise, Sound shall not be amplified from within a structure in such a manner to be heard in an outdoor location, i.e. through an open window or through an open door or window. Sounds must not be heard beyond the property boundaries. These proposed changes, unlike the proposed 50-foot setback, represent a true compromise, allowing Sunset Overlook to have outdoor seating, service, and smoking in the front of its building at the best location to observe the sunset, while allowing my clients to enjoy their homes and providing protection from noise. The 50-foot setback provides no compromise and will result in Sunset Overlook resuming the activities it carried on when this dispute began. We propose the above changes in a cooperative effort to resolve this matter and prevent more litigation. That is all of the written comments.
Thanks, Scott. Any direct participation requests on this one?
Yes. The first name on the list is Natalie Lorenz.
Natalie, are you there?
All right, give her a second. She'll be.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, hi Natalie, thanks for joining. So I'm going to swear you in real quick. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
You may proceed.
Yeah, so I just wanted to make sure that the council that the Plan Commission understands that we're trying to be cooperative in this matter and try to get things to a place where all the parties can come to a compromise and live with one another. So in that spirit is why we have presented the changes that we presented, specifically to sections B and G to 17.26.030. And the changes we proposed are not huge. They're fairly minimal changes. But basically, instead of having a 50-foot setback on all of the areas of Sunset Overlook's property, it would be a situation where Sunset Overlook could have any outdoor seating service that they want just in the front of their property, which is the best place to observe the sunset anyway, and while leaving the back areas of their property open so that my clients don't have to endure some of the noise issues that they've had to endure. So that's kind of the spirit on why we're proposing the things that we're proposing for those changes. And then the same thing from section G. It's a pretty minimal change. It's just the deletion of the word deliberately. I think the reason that we're concerned about that is we're concerned that it creates kind of a loophole where Sunset Overlook might say, okay, well, we weren't deliberately causing this noise, or something like that. And so I think that that's kind of the reasoning behind why we wanted to get rid of that word deliberately, just so that it would be clear if there was a violation or not, and it's not strictly dependent on whether somebody can prove intent, which is it's something that is going to be difficult for anyone to prove. So that's why we proposed those changes. And again, the purpose of this was to try to come to some compromise and understanding with everyone, so that we can try to put this thing to bed and stop having this, as Paul said, Hatfield and McCoy situation, and just put this whole thing behind us. So I'm hopeful that Sunset Overlook is of a similar mindset on this and is willing to come to the table and work on compromise as well. One thing that I did want to just clarify with respect to the changes that have been proposed, Mr. Donachie mentioned a few times that the city council was proposing these changes, which I don't know that the city council has actually drafted these particular changes. I think he's probably right that the city council wanted changes to be drafted. But if the city council had approved these changes, then I think that approval would not have happened in an open meeting, and that approval would not be legal. So I'm just saying that I think we need some clarification that these particular, the way this has been drafted has not been approved at this point by the city. It's not something that's been presented to you for a rubber stamp. It's been presented to you for your actual consideration, careful consideration. And so it would be every bit reasonable for you to actually consider these small changes that we've proposed to try to come to a compromise with Sunset Overlook. Thank you.
Natalie, can you hear me?
I can.
Terry Brooker, I've been kind of staying off screen. I can assure you that nothing's been approved prior to this, so.
Okay.
This is a new first look for the planning commission. It's never been presented to the council committee at all.
Okay. Thank you, Terry.
It wasn't presented, but it was shared with them via email.
Right, but nothing, there's been no official, nothing has been placed on the agenda for discussion at a committee meeting or a council or anything of any formal nature whatsoever. This is the first time this has been presented to any public body here in the city of Columbia for a deliberation.
Thank you, Terry.
The next speaker who has to participate is Cindy Huseman.
I don't know if you can hear him. Oh. What is that?
Hi, Cindy, are you there? Computer things?
Cindy, you have to start your video and unmute your microphone.
Okay.
You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes. I really am just going to pass on this.
Okay.
I get really too much feedback.
Okay.
Okay.
Anybody else?
Yeah, there was one more person to sign up, and that is Daniel Lytle.
Hi, Daniel.
Hi, how are you, everyone?
Good. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Go ahead and proceed.
I represent Sunset Overlook in this matter, well, in actually the ancillary litigation that is pending. And, it is unfortunate, and I appreciate the fact that Ms. Lorenz has identified a desire for compromise, but the reality of this is there has been some very long and contentious litigation, mainly because there has been an unwillingness to compromise. I want to be very clear about something is that, throughout this process, Sunset had been very forthcoming with the city, every zoning commission, as to their intentions and their desired use of the property, and was provided significant input and advice in terms of what the regulations that would be binding them or for which they would need to be held accountable. And there was always a assurance that they would be allowed to both serve and sell both food and drink using outdoor spaces. And in reliance of that, there was significant money spent towards improving the property, I got a child in the background, improving the real estate and also a large area in the back that is used by many of their customers and enjoyed. And in fact, once the litigation began, Mr. Dunnicky in his role had provided an interpretation, a formal interpretation as to what the city had been following and their intent the entire time. And though the courts have interpreted the actual language, it just highlights the need for this commission to confirm formally what the language and intent was of the code and allow Sunset to operate as intended and as had they had been allowed orderly and encouraged to operate from the outset of this. In support of this, I know Mr. Dunnicky had identified just the numbers, but I think there's about 3,000 total signatures in support, and there are 50% of those are from Columbia. And not just that, I think there's 16 different parties who reside within 250 feet of the Sunset who are in support of this. Throughout this process, Sunset has attempted to cooperate and work with everyone, despite numerous noise complaints from the city that were all unfounded. They've worked very hard to be basically something that the city can be proud of and the city can enjoy. And unfortunately, unless this language is codified to confirm what they have been told on, this will severely damage their business. But this is not just a Sunset issue. This is a C1 issue. And so I don't want to just tie into Sunset, but now asking for specific changes by several residents, I think is we're getting too much of a pinpoint approach. This needs to be what the city had always intended and interpreted. This needs to be codified at this point.
Thank you. Okay, thanks a lot. We have anybody else?
That was it.
Okay, at this point, I'm going to close the public hearing portion and then roll into the final commission deliberations. That's where we get a chance to discuss what we just heard. Would anybody like to jump in with their comments? And I also want to remind what we just heard, remind everybody that this is indeed a C1 issue, not specific necessarily to any one business. Andrea, were you going to say something? Okay. Anybody have anything to say?
I have a question for Scott. Are you wanting a motion for approval of all three?
Yeah, this is one set of amendments, yeah.
Well, if there's no more comments, I would entertain a motion on this one, covering these three changes. If anybody would be so inclined.
Are we motioning for all three or are we doing them individually?
This is all one set of amendments, so it's just one motion to approve all.
Yes.
Thank you. I'd like to make the motion to approve the text amendments as written. Is that the right way to say it?
I'll second. This is Beth Cutter.
Thanks, Will. Thanks, Beth. And Secretary Mistler, you would conduct the vote.
One second. Doug Garmer,
Yes.
Hal Hoppy,
Yes.
Beth Cutter Sanchez,
Yes.
Amy Mistler, yes. Tony Murphy,
Yes.
Lauren Noby,
Yes.
Will Trowbridge,
Yes.
Andrea Yoakum.
Yes.
Okay, thank you for that. And with that, we're going to move on to calling item 5B, which is the public hearing for a special use permit to allow ancillary entertainment in the C1 zoning district for Sunset Overlook Restaurant. And I'm going to at this time ask Scott to explain the request to table the item as indicated in the agenda.
Once again, since there are special public hearing requirements for special use permits, as well as variances, the same apply, that don't apply to other types of zoning actions. Basically, there's, it makes it a little more difficult to do. I have notified the applicant, and we're going to ask the commission to once again table this item, and this would be tabled to a date certain. We're asking for the to be tabled to the July 13th regular meeting of the Planning Commission.
Were there any written comments or questions concerning this one, Scott?
There were not any written comments, but I did have Cindy Huseman signed up to participate directly for this one.
Okay.
Don't know if she still wanted to. It might have.
Cindy, if you'd like to participate and you're willing to try your audio again, we'd be willing to go there.
Okay, no, I'm just going to go ahead and pass on it since at the time we signed up, I wasn't sure it was going to be moved out.
Okay, thanks, Cindy.
Thanks.
That was it, and there were no
No additionals?
no.
Okay, so at this time then I'm going to entertain a motion to table this item until the July 13th Plan Commission meeting, if someone is so inclined.
Can I ask, I have a question real quick. Why are we, I missed the part on why we're tabling it. It was real hard to hear you, Scott.
Because there are special requirements that apply only to special hearings for special uses and variances, and after the decision was made to table it in lieu of moving forward, so that we can do it when we have a actual public participation in face to face.
Okay, so just it's a legalese kind of thing. I missed the first part. Thank you.
Yes, mostly concerns about the procedural issues that go along with public hearings for special uses.
You can blame the city attorney, Will.
Thanks, Will. So then again, I would entertain a motion to table this item to the July 13th meeting if someone's so inclined.
I'll make that motion. This is Amy Missler.
Thanks, Amy. I'll second it. You can conduct the roll call vote when you're ready.
Doug Garmer,
Yes.
Hal Hoppy,
Yes.
Beth Cutter Sanchez,
Yes.
Amy Missler, yes. Tony Murphy,
Yes.
Lauren Noby,
Yes.
Will Trowbridge,
Yes.
Andrea Yoakum.
Yes.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Next up is new business. At this point, I would call item 6A, which is the consolidation of lot 16, Meadow Ridge Plat 9, and lot 1, Meadow Ridge Plat 10, and the vacation of the utility easements. Does anybody have any ex parte communications they'd like to report for this item? If not, I would ask Scott to present the staff report on this.
This is pretty simple and straightforward. If you all were able to see the map, and I'll just pull it up here for or not. So this is pretty straightforward. These are two platted lots next to one another. The same owner owns both. The subdivision code allows for the consolidation with, really, it's not even a replat per se. When there's no additional requirement for new easements or new dedications of right-of-way, this is allows the lots to be combined with just simple approval of the drawing. In this case, there are easements to be vacated. There are utility easements that are currently not in use by any public utilities or by any private utilities. We have received a copy of the communications from HTC that they will not be using those, either of those easements, and they approve of the vacation of the easements. We were just awaiting similar approval from Ameren, Illinois, but as of this moment, I hadn't heard. And the engineer for the applicant is available. Is he? James? Is Jim on? Okay. Jim is on, and he can. I'll ask him to clarify that if they've since received approval from Ameren. Staff does find that upon receiving the approval from Ameren, the request will satisfy the requirements of the subdivision code for the lot consolidation. And we would recommend that the Plan Commission adopt the staff findings and recommend approval of the lot consolidation and easement vacations for the subject property.
Thanks, Scott. At this point, would entertain any questions from the commissioners? And that would be also for Jim, if he has any input that the commissioners would like to ask him, feel free.
Can I clarify, Jim, are you still awaiting notification from Ameren?
That's correct.
So okay, so you're okay with it still just being the conditional approval based on that one, receiving?
Yeah.
Sounds good.
So I have
So this is an existing home is already there. It's just the homeowner wanting to clear up some stuff on the lot in terms of easements.
Jim, would you like to answer that for us?
Yeah, they own both lots, and they have a house on one lot, and they just want to combine the other two lots so they can do whatever they want with the other lot as one piece of property and not have to worry about that property line in between.
Thank you.
And then in general, I see that you said we have no application or filing fees for such requests. Is that yet to be submitted, or just there's no existing fee table?
It just requires approval. Yeah, because there's
no table.
There's really no work to do. I mean, it's just receiving a couple letters and getting a letter from. The work is all on the consulting engineers or surveyors side.
Jim, did you have something you wanted to share with us about this?
No, not unless you have any specific questions.
Any commissioners have any questions for Mr. Vogt? Scott, did we get any written comments or questions concerning this?
No, sir.
Nothing, no direct, just pitch?
No, sir.
Okay, great. So any other commissioners have any deliberations they'd like to discuss concerning this item? Any questions for Jim? If not, then I would entertain a motion to approve this or disallow it.
This is Andrea Yoakum. I will make a motion to recommend the approval of the lot consolidation and easement vacations for Lot 16 of Meadow Ridge Plat 9 and Lot 1 of Meadow Ridge Plat 10, subject to the applicant submitting documentation of approval from Ameren.
Andrea,
I'll second that. This is Beth Cutter.
thanks, Beth. And Amy, when you're ready.
Doug Garmer,
Yes.
Hal Hoppy,
Yes.
Beth Cutter Sanchez,
Yes.
Amy Missler, yes. Tony Murphy,
Yes.
Lauren Noby,
Yes.
Will Trowbridge,
Yes.
Andrea Yoakum.
Yes.
Okay, thanks, everybody. All right, with that, we'll move on to the unfinished business piece. I see there's no agenda items on here, Scott, correct?
Correct.
And committee reports? Nothing. So, committee reports?
Staff reports.
Any staff reports or communications you'd like to share?
No, just on July 13th, in addition to the special use permit, we'll also have a rezoning consideration, looking at just food for thought in advance. Brought the idea to City Council of our Business Park 2 zoning district area that's down in the Bottoms area, where the industrial park now are currently, potentially rezoning that to I-1 light industrial, to maybe make it a little more amenable to industrial development. That was well received, so they said, go ahead and take it to the planning commission. So just kind of an early heads up. Don't have anything else to report from the staff side.
Okay, thanks, Scott. With that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn at this point. If someone would be so inclined.
This is Lauren. I motion to adjourn.
Lauren,
I can second that.
thanks, Will. On a voice vote, all in favor of adjourning, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? No opposed? I declare this meeting closed. Thanks, everybody.